Hello. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Now I believe that if you are tuning into this video, you have enrolled for our complete VID Theory Driving Course, and this is one of the lectures where we'll be mastering VID tricky questions. So I want you to enjoy yourself, and also you have writing material so that you can write down the things that you need to write down. Okay, so without wasting much time, let's begin. Okay, so the first one, it says I may park no closer to a corner than. Well, you have come across this question if you have been reading, right? So in this video, we are just going to be mastering those tricky questions so that after this lecture, you'll be able to answer each and every question no matter how it comes, okay? So I want you to know that when you are parking to a corner, you should make sure that you leave a distance of 7.5 meters from the corner, okay? But however, let's look at this picture. You can see that this person is parked very close to a corner. Now, if it were me and I'm driving, I'm trying to navigate this corner to make a right turn, probably I'll hit this car. So that's why this 7.5 meters was put in place. So this car is parked very close to a corner, and that's a potential accident that is waiting to happen there. So this car may actually cause an accident. So I took this picture so that to let you know that a car that is parked closer to a corner like this can potentially cause an accident. So what you should do, you should make sure that you leave 7.5 from the corner. So 7.5 meters from the corner. Now other question may say, how far from a corner are you forbidden to park? Well, that's anything that is less than 7.5. Well, definitely anything that is like this, right? What you see here, definitely this one is prohibited. So any meters, whether it's 6 meters or 5 meters or even 7 meters, they are prohibited. You should make sure that you park from a corner at a distance that is 7.5 or greater. Now let's move on to the next one. The next one says, when traveling at 90 kilometers per hour, I must leave a gap of. Now I wrote something down here. Now if you are wise, I want you to take this down, right? Write this down in your notebook. So you say for every 15 kilometers per hour that you're traveling at, you're supposed to leave a gap of 1 car length. 15 kilometers per hour is close to 1 car length, right? What about 90 kilometers per hour? That's simple proportion, right? So this is done so that if the vehicle in front is to do a sudden braking, maybe something has happened to the vehicle that is in front of it, and that vehicle is forced to do a sudden braking, you also should have enough time for your vehicle to stop before you hit that car. So that gap is what we are looking at. So we say that for every 15 kilometers per hour that you're traveling at, you're supposed to leave a gap 1 car length. So you do an approximation, right? The length of my car is probably like this, so you leave a gap of that 1 car length so that you have enough time to put your vehicle to a full stop before hitting the car in front of you. So therefore, what that means is that for you to come up with the answer for 90 kilometers per hour, just have to say 90 divided by 15 and you come up with the correct answer. Now let me show you something. Now I've given you a graph here. So this is the graph, right? This graph says for every 15 kilometers per hour that you travel, you're supposed to leave a gap of 1 car length. So 15 is close to 1, right? What about 45? 45 kilometers is close to 45 kilometers per hour is close to 3 vehicle length. 60 kilometers per hour is close to 4 vehicle length. 75 kilometers per hour is close to 5 vehicle length. So it just gets greater and greater, right? So it's a simple proportion. Remember, 90 kilometers per hour is close to 6 car length. So you should be able to memorize this, right? Let's say that you're traveling at 90 kilometers per hour and the vehicle in front of you does a sudden braking. Now you need 6 vehicle length of your own car in order to come to a full stop before you hit the car in front of you. So basically that's what you are saying. Now let's move on to the next one. Now most people do get confused with this sign. So I'm just going to be able to talk a lot about that sign. Okay, so that sign is what we call a steep descent. So when approaching this sign, so when you're approaching a sign like this, you should be able to engage a lower gear. So the correct answer here is B. When approaching a steep descent sign, you should engage a lower gear. Also, what you need to know is that when you're approaching a steep descent or approaching a steep ascent, you should engage a lower gear. What is a lower gear? A lower gear, we're talking about gear 1, right? So this lower gear, what do we know about gear 1? We use it for moving off our car from a stationary position, right? So that high power is what we need when we probably want to do a U-start. So we use our lower gear when we want to do a U-start, right? So it is high power. But another thing about the lower gear is that it has low speed. That's why you always have to change from gear 1 to gear 2 when you gain enough speed. and want to increase speed, obviously that has to be accompanied with a change of gears, right? So you obviously need to change from gear 1 to gear 2 because you need to increase the speed of your vehicle as you move along the road, right? So gear 1 is high power, it also is low speed. Okay, so you need a high power when you want to do a steep ascent. So a steep ascent, remember a steep ascent, what do you do? Engage a lower gear. Okay, what do you do also when you want to navigate a steep descent? A steep descent is like this. You also engage a lower gear. So yeah, you heard me correct, it's not a higher gear. So most of my students, I say, what do you do when you want to navigate steep ascent? They say lower gear. What about the steep descent? They say higher gear. No, that's not correct. Steep descent, steep ascent, both of them, they need a lower gear. Now I might say, why is it that a steep descent need a lower gear? Well, it's like this, right? I said you need high power when you want to navigate a steep ascent, right? And you also need low speed when you want to navigate a steep descent, because the steep descent, your car is rolling down a mountain. So as the car keeps on moving, it will start to gain more and more speed by gravity, right? Gravity is working on it, it's pulling it more, it's pulling the car down more, it's pulling the car down more. So what you need is something that can lock the speed in place. So as we said, gear 1 is low speed. So with that being said, it means that when the car is in gear 1, it cannot move at a certain speed that it would normally do if it was in gear 2 or gear 3. So that's why you always have to change gears. So when you put your car in gear 1 and you are traveling down a steep descent, so what you're actually doing is that you're actually restricting your car to move at a certain speed per se. So your car cannot move at a certain speed because it is in gear 1, and gear 1 can only go up to a certain speed, which is very, very minimum end, and you don't expect to get a speeding ticket when you are moving in gear 1. Okay, so gear 1 is what we call a heavy gear. So to bring this matter to a close, I want you to know that at a steep ascent, at a steep descent, just engage lower gear, period. If you didn't understand what I just said and all the explanation that I just gave, just note this: if you see a steep ascent sign or steep descent sign, or you don't even know is this a steep ascent or a steep descent. Now let's look at this one. You may be confused. Hey, Mr. Pauline, is this a steep descent or steep ascent? Well, whatever it is, the answer is always the same. Just engage lower gear. Okay, so these are the tricks that I'm telling you guys. These are things that will actually help you. Now let's move on to the next slide and see what we have. So what does this sign mean? Here we have two types of restriction. I want you to note this down, right? If you can draw these diagrams in your notes, make sure that you do. Okay, I want you to pay close attention to these triangles here. These two triangles, they tell us a lot. Okay, and also pay close attention to these triangles, they also tell us a lot. Now you can see that the first one is a height restriction. Why? Because these triangles, they show us the top and the bottom. Can you see it? The top and the bottom. So this diagram is telling you that all the vehicles that have a height that is exceeding 4.2 are not allowed in this road. Why? Because this road does not accommodate for vehicles that have a height that is more than 7.2. Now, in what portion of the road is that? Well, we can talk about a flyover, right? Or the vehicles that are going down, right? Or that fly over. Maybe the clearance space may not accommodate vehicles that are greater than 4.2. Or let's talk about a tunnel. A tunnel, right? You have a tunnel, and in that tunnel, it may not actually accommodate vehicles that are greater than 4.2. Or let's even talk about a drive-through. So all these are situations or are areas that are associated with the height restriction. Okay. Now let's talk about the next one. The next one is what we call a length restriction. You see a length restriction when there is a vehicle like this, right? Because this vehicle is showing you from the back to the front. So that's length, right? Basically from the back to the front, or from the front to the back. And it's saying that the vehicles that are allowed on this portion of the road should not be more than 15 meters. So if your vehicle is longer than 15 meters, it means that you are breaking the law at this point. You are not allowed on this portion of the road. So you recognize a length restriction when it is a small vehicle like this and the vehicle is clearly showing its back to the front or front to the back, and it is telling you that any vehicle that is greater than 15 meters in length is not allowed at this portion of the road. Now I hope I've explained that clearly. Now let's move on to the next one, right? Now when approaching this sign, I want you to know that these signs are similar yet they are different. Okay, now this one we have a pedestrian and a cyclist. You see a pedestrian when you have a stickman like this, and you see a cyclist when you have a bicycle. Okay, so in this one we have a strike through here, and each time you see a strike through, this means that it's probably prohibited, right? So there is prohibition in the first sign. However, in the second sign there is no prohibition. So what does this mean? Okay, so the first one, it means both cyclists and pedestrians are prohibited beyond this sign. So after this sign, after the first sign, it means that both cyclists and pedestrians are not welcome on this portion of the road, or they are not allowed on this portion of the road. Now what about the second one? Well, the second one, we don't see that strike through as we saw in the first one. So this one, it means that this portion of the road is set aside for pedestrians and cyclists. Now if you see that sign and you're a motorist, it means that you are not allowed on this portion of the road. Why? Because that sign means that this road or this portion of the road, or beyond that sign or beyond the point of that sign, it means that that road is now meant for pedestrians and cyclists. So that's it, right? So I hope you understood this. So do make sure that you take this down, right? Okay, now let's look at the following one. Elena's driver is exempted from wearing a seatbelt when reversing. Now I want you to pay close attention to this man here. So let's assume this man is a Elena driver. Okay, so this man wants to do a reverse, right? A reverse. So if this man is to successfully do a reverse, we have to get their head out of the window like the way he's doing it like this, right? So if they do that, it means that the seatbelt will be in the way. So Elena driver is allowed to remove a seatbelt or operate the vehicle without a seatbelt when they are reversing their vehicle. So I want you to know that. Actually, write this point down. Elena driver is exempted from wearing a seatbelt when reversing. Why? Because while they are in the process of getting their head out the window so that they can properly see the outside. Because remember, Elena driver does not have enough experience to use the rearview mirrors. Okay, so they are allowed to get their head out the window. So Elena driver is exempted from wearing a seatbelt when reversing, simply because the seatbelt will be in the way and it would restrict them free movement to actually be able to operate the vehicle. Now let's look at the next one, right? I hope you are learning, guys. Now 3 situations where drivers are required to dim their headlamps. Now this one is very important, okay? So get your writing materials. So I want you to write down these 3 situations where drivers are required to dim their headlamps. Now, before I talk about that, I want you to know that these are the headlamps, and you know that the headlamps can be dimmed, right? Which means that you can reduce the brightness of the headlamps. So when are the drivers allowed to reduce that brightness? Or it's first, right, when meeting other traffic on the road. Now, if you are meeting an oncoming vehicles and both of you have your headlamps on bright beam, which means that light is going to be too much for both of you. So at that instance, both of you are required to dim your headlamps, right? Because both of you now, you two are contributing the lights towards the road. So at that instance, you two are required to dim your headlamps because you are meeting other traffic. So when you are meeting other traffic on the road, you are required to dim your headlamps. Secondly, when traveling behind another vehicle. So if you are traveling behind another vehicle, it's also important that you dim your headlamps, because if your headlamps are on bright beam and you're traveling behind another vehicle, your lights can actually be able to distract the driver that is in front of you, because they will go through that back screen into the car of the driver, and it will actually be able to be a distraction that can actually potentially cause an accident. Now the third one is when you are driving in a well-lit street. So in a well-lit street, there are already street lights, so there's really no need for you to put your headlamps on bright beam. Okay, so if you put your headlamps on bright beam, because remember, these lamps can actually cause a driver not to see properly, and that can actually potentially cause an accident. So do pay close attention to that and do mind your headlamps. Okay, now let's talk about the breakdown triangles. You've seen this red triangle probably on the road, right? So questions do come, and it may actually say, from what distance should the breakdown triangles be put? First of all, the purpose of the breakdown triangles is to signal that that vehicle is broken down. So if your vehicle is broke down in the middle of the road, you have to put the breakdown triangles one at the back and one in the front. Okay, so breakdown triangle should be placed within 30 to 50 meters from the nearest point of the breakdown. So you go to your back right and you measure between 30 to 50 meters. Then you put your breakdown triangle, and you also go to the front and you measure from your vehicle going forward. You measure between 30 to 50 meters, right? And you put another breakdown triangle. So these are what we call red reflective breakdown triangles, okay? And they are put 30 to 50 meters, so just know that. The next one, if involved in a serious accident, I must report to the police as soon as possible or within 24 hours. That statement is very clear. You should report to the police as soon as possible or within 24 hours each time you are involved in an accident. Okay, so another question here, we want to talk about when you are supposed to have your headlamps on. So let me read this. The time should person driving on the road switch on their headlamps is between 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. So note this word, right? In fact, write it down. The times that person are driving on the road should have their headlamps switched on is between 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Okay, so here's the question. If you are driving on the road at 7 p.m., should you have your headlamps? Obviously, yes. What about 6 o'clock in the morning? Obviously, yes. Why? Because you are supposed to switch them off at 6:30 in the morning. The maximum speed limit of heavy vehicles towing two trailers on a tarred road is 80 kilometers per hour. Now, it does not necessarily have to be two trailers. All it needs to be is a heavy vehicle. Any heavy vehicle that is traveling on a tarred road should maintain the speed limit of 80 kilometers per hour. Now, when you're talking about tarred road, you're talking about highway. These are nice, good, surfaced roads. So a tarred road is as good as a highway. Okay. Now let's move on to the next one. You want to talk about the free play of a steering wheel. What is the steering wheel free play? So steering wheel free play is when the steering wheel can be moved back and forth in your hand. So what that means is that you can move your steering wheel back and forth, but it is not causing any movement on the wheels. So a steering wheel must not have more than 45 degrees of free play. So what that means is that you should not be able to move your steering wheel 45 degrees without causing any significant movement in the wheels in front of your vehicle. Okay, so if you find that your steering wheel is more than 45 degrees free play, that means that your steering wheel free play is exceeding the recommended amount, which means that for you to cause a small turn in the wheels in front of your vehicle, you need to turn your steering wheel a significant amount, of which that's not correct, right? The common reason for free play in the steering wheel are loosened in steering gear itself or loosened in one or more of the steering linked sockets. So do make sure that you have a steering wheel of 45 degrees or lesser, because that can potentially cause an accident. Now let's talk about the heavy vehicles, right? Heavy vehicle reflectors. A vehicle should have the following reflectors: white in front and chevron pattern at the red. What is chevron? Chevron are those yellow and red stripes that we see on the back of the heavy vehicle. Okay, now let's talk about the normal vehicles that we see. The reflectors that we see on a normal vehicle is, write this down, white in front, amber on the side, and red at the back. Okay, so write this down. These are the normal reflectors that we see on a light motor vehicles: white in front, amber on the side, red at the back. Now here let's talk about the maximum speed. The maximum speed on wide tarred road is 120 kilometers per hour. Remember, when we talk about wide tarred road, we're talking about the highway, right? The highway. Okay, so the maximum speed is 120 kilometers per hour on a highway. Now the general speed in the urban areas, that's when we have CBDs in town, right? So in town, you're really not supposed to be moving at 120 kilometers per hour. Why? Because we also have people in town. Okay, so you're supposed to move at half the speed, which is 60 kilometers per hour. Okay, so the legal maximum speed on Zimbabwean highway, remember, highway is what we call wide tarred road, is 120 kilometers per hour for light vehicles, and for heavy vehicles in highway they are supposed to move at 80 kilometers per hour. Because remember, we also talked about that. Let me show you the one that we talked about. So here it is, right? The maximum speed limit of this heavy vehicle. So this one is a heavy vehicle, right? So this heavy vehicle should have the maximum speed of 80 kilometers per hour. Now this one cannot obviously move at 120 kilometers per hour because 120 is for our light vehicles, which is class 4, right? Now let's move on to the lines that we see on the road, and these lines, they are also called longitudinal lines because they run along the road. You can see this line, it runs along the road. So I want you to place close attention to this and also do right notes, right? A continuous white line on the center of the road. Here we are talking about a continuous white line on the center of the road. You usually see this line where there's a bridge. So what this sign means that no vehicle at any point should straddle this line. Okay, so if you are going in this direction, obviously the one that is in this lane is going in this direction, the one that is in this lane is going in this direction. So it means that you are not supposed to overtake. So you may actually see this line on a bridge, because on a bridge overtaking is usually not recommended, right? Okay, so it means that no vehicle at any point of this line should straddle that line or cross that line or overtake. Okay, now let's talk about a double continuous white line. We can also have a double continuous white line in the center of the road. Now this also means that the vehicles that are along this lane here, I want you to see where my pointer is. These vehicles are going in this direction and they have a continuous white line on their side. This is this continuous white line on their side. It means that they are also not supposed to overtake. What about the vehicles in this lane? Now in this lane, they are also going in this direction. So here they also have a continuous white line on their side. It means that they are not supposed to overtake. Now I really hope you are getting that right. Now a continuous white line besides a broken white line, we can see that on the road when we have a continuous white line besides a broken white line. Now if you are in this lane, it is most assuredly that you are going in this direction. So if you are going in this direction, it means that we have a broken white line on your side. A broken white line is on your side. So with that being said, it means that you can overtake, because a broken white line means that you can straddle the line, you can cross the line, or you can overtake slow moving traffic. However, the traffic that is oncoming or that is in this direction or that is in this lane, that traffic cannot overtake. However, why? Because on their side they have this continuous white line. Because remember, it means that you can overtake if the broken white line is on your side. Now the broken white line is on this side only, so which means that only this traffic can overtake. And we have a continuous white line on this side. It means that this traffic is not allowed to overtake. When stopping a motor vehicle on the road except in traffic, you stop on the extreme left of the road or in an authorized parking space. So this one is just basically telling us the point where we are allowed to stop our vehicle, that is on the extreme left of the road, so that you don't disturb the flow of traffic, or in an authorized parking space. When you are temporarily parked by the side of the road at night, you are to leave your tail lights on or side lights on. Now, like this guy is temporarily parked by the side of the road. What they should do is should leave their tail lights on. Why is that? Because they want other vehicles to see them, right? So other vehicles that are moving, because this is at night and it is hazardous to stop your vehicle at this point. So what you need to do, you need to leave your tail lights on and side lights on so that other vehicles can clearly see you. Okay, so you do that so that other vehicles can clearly see that you are parked there and they can actually be able to avoid you in time, because mind you, this is at night. So what are the colors of a private vehicle registration plate? It's black on yellow background. Okay, so it's black on yellow background. Okay guys, for this lecture I have to end here. Now remember, we're still not finished. We have done half of this. Now do make sure that you watch out for the next video. Okay, so if you are done with this, I'm gonna send you a link to the next video so that you can finish this, because you need to know these things, right? So thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.